All right. And let's see, we should be live, but this is being very slow on my end. Can I confirm it? Uh-oh. I put me on the wrong thing. Hold on. I'm pretty sure you can hear me, but my YouTube studio is just being wonky. One sec. Oh, come on. And there we go. Okay, perfect. Now I can see. All right. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the slow start. Usually this would have been like 2 hours earlier. Uh, just been a busy day. My days are not as busy as they used to be, but they are still busy. And wanted to make sure that I got this stream in before I have to possibly hop on another call. And then I've got several hours of driving I need to go do because life never stops. There's always more stuff to deal with. Yep, and let me take care of audio right quick. There we go. Is that better? All right. I hope so. And I see Anna, I see Kellen Dunn. Welcome. So, all right. We will jump right into it because I may or may not go to another, may or may not have a call I need to take here in a bit. But we've got plenty of things to cover. So there is a situation of possible new funding for Ukraine from the United States. There is the falling out ongoing between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Hopefully that will continue. Hopefully that will actually be an actual falling out, and old Donnie won't end up just doing a 180 like he tends to do on multiple different topics. But we shall see. So, let's go ahead and jump into two quick articles on the topic, and then we'll jump into some other news as well. All right. Reader mode is slow. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put the link for this first article. It's from CBS into the chat. All right, and let me share my screen. Oh, nope. Always defaults to the wrong window. Hold up. size it out. There we go. All right. Trump considers greenlighting new funding for Ukraine, sources say. What Trump is saying about the Russia-Ukraine war. So we covered this a little bit before, how what's happening right now is a pretty... Oh, let me turn off this donation bar. As a reminder, we have the ongoing donations to Anton. Also keep Anton in your thoughts because he's been sick, currently recovering. He, from what I have been informed, may be needing to shift over and actually be more directly involved with the armed forces. So the fundraiser for the 110th Mechanized Brigade, I'm going to check with him if that will be continuing or if he is going to need to take a break from that temporarily because of other duties. I will let you all know. In the meantime, we still have plenty of other things. There are the radios for Taiwan, civil defense, which has almost met its goal. We only need 164 more dollars, 163 and 80 cents actually, and that'll put it at the goal to provide to Kingbun, who's been on the channel before. And then there's also the 3D printers for Sophie, who is helping out with the helping out with 3D printers in order to basically do drone building, in order to provide drones that are built there in Ukraine. So I'll put those links into the chat momentarily. You should also find information in the description. All right, let's move into the news. All right. President Trump is considering authorizing fresh funding for Ukraine for the first time since he took office in January, multiple diplomatic sources told CBS News. Oh, and let me turn on the QA box. Yep, Kellen Dunn. I wouldn't pay too much attention to what Orange Turd says because it's all just vomit. Just look at his actions and none of it is helpful to Ukraine. I completely agree. That's why absolutely it has to be taken with a grain of salt because Donald Trump is not a trustworthy person. We all know that. He is, however, egotistical and narcissistic. So, who knows? I mean, we might see a situation where he could just become incredibly angry with Putin, but I think Putin himself is smart enough to find ways to placate Trump in different ways, probably over private calls or something. So yeah, we take it all with a grain of salt, but it is still a development nonetheless. So I mean, at this point, it really does look like a lot of what Ukraine will be getting is either going to be made directly in Ukraine or provided by European allies. Problem being that many of those European allies have American equipment that they want to provide, but they need permission in order to do so. So it's more like, even if he being Trump, never gets to where he's like, send all the weapons to Ukraine, it might be possible to at least make it less of a pain to transfer American-made weaponry from European countries, as long as he's, angry at Putin. But only time will tell. All right. The sources indicated the new funding could be intended to send a message to Russia, which has pounded Ukraine with drone and missile attacks in recent days. Russia this week launched what Ukraine Uh, wi- uh, what Ukraine described as the largest drone attack since its full-scale invasion began in February 2022, the latest in a wave of aerial assaults that have pummeled Kiev and other cities. Mr. Trump hinted earlier this week that he planned to send Ukraine more defensive weapons. Just days earlier, his administration paused some arms shipments, a move one White House official cast as one part of a wider global review of weapons transfers. The source of the possible new funding for Ukraine is unclear, but U.S. officials told CBS News Mr. Trump has $3.85 billion in leftover Biden-era presidential drawdown authority sitting at his fingertips, which could be used to send American military equipment to Ukraine. Former officials also told CBS News the president has the authority to seize around $5 billion in foreign Russian assets and direct the funds to Ukraine, though neither he nor former President Joe Biden have used that power. CBS News has reached out to the White House for comment. The U.S. has sent tens of billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine since early 2022. Mr. Trump has previously been critical of that spending and has pressed Ukraine and Russia to work toward a peace agreement, periodically lashing out at both countries. In recent days, Russia has drawn the president's ire. He told reporters last week he was very disappointed with a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he later suggested that Russia's strikes on Ukraine could prompt him to send more arms to Ukraine. Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people, Mr. Trump told reporters during a cabinet meeting Tuesday, so we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that. At other points, Mr. Trump has attacked Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. At a February Oval Office meeting with the Ukrainian leader descended into a verbal argument, leading to a brief pause on U.S. aid, and Mr. Trump has accused Zelensky of prolonging the war. Trump. So, again, as I said, Trump is not trustworthy, but the fact that anything is being resumed at all as far as aid goes, it tells me that there are still those, and by those I mean there are Republicans in the current, um, well, within the Trump regime, because I refuse to call it an administration. But there are still Republicans who support Ukraine who are able to get that message through to Donald Trump and other members of his circle that it is important. Um, but how long that message will last, I don't know. I guess we shall see. It tells me that even among uh, the current political climate in the U.S. with Donald Trump, sadly, in the Oval Office again, um, there isn't a purely Russian sycophant, Russophile, far right takeover as of yet. There is strong influence from that wing, but not a full takeover, even within the MAGA movement. Within the MAGA movement, it's more of a, you know, I don't care. I see Ukraine as just any other country that's got a war going on. And there's still that traditional view of Russia. Again, these are like the MAGA perspective, in my opinion. And then Russia being seen as kind of back and forth between a major rival who still cannot be trusted, which is good. We need to have that view continue to be the case. And then Russia as a potential business partner. Because there's no real, like, close, strong cultural connection, personally, I would say, between the hyper-conservative MAGA movement and Russia as a whole, beyond their thoughts on certain social views. Um, it's really it's all about business, really, is what it comes down to. Um, so hopefully we will see more aid go to Ukraine, and we will see Democrat and Republican voices that support Ukraine up on Capitol Hill actually prompt some movement, prompt some allowances of not just American aid, but European aid that originates from the United States to be sent in larger numbers. I'm not holding my breath, but that is my hope. Let's see here. Still see articles that are getting the missiles shipment wrong. They keep saying they are approving 10 Patriots. It's only 10 missiles. Yeah, I haven't seen the articles about the exact amount. I know it's not much. It's paltry. So it's really just a political statement. It's not even close to enough stuff. On a serious note, prior I think this is supposed to be USAID that's already been contracted will ensure Ukraine. Hold on, it's covering the message for me now. Here we go. Gets weapons through end of 2027. Is there any way Orange Turd or his cronies like Colby Hegseth can cancel these contracts? That's a really good question. I mean, I don't think that they can cancel them technically, but can they postpone and delay and basically just, you know, be uncooperative to the point that they are essentially de facto not canceled but no longer useful as contracts? Possibly. That's very possible. Um, could they just, could they just ignore what they don't like, and allow the consequences to fall like they do on so many other topics and issues, including ignoring uh, rulings from judges and the judiciary? Possibly. Um, I hope not. But again, the United States is not in a time of law and order right now. The rule of law is not exactly what it typically is in America at this time. Yeah, that's true. Depends on what is in the contract as a penalty. That's true. And so, no, Terrence Swab is very accurate about that. I would have to actually take a close look at the paperwork, at the contracts themselves, and that would give me a better idea of whether or not um, they would renege, they would go back uh, on the contracts. Anyway, Trump says NATO is paying for Ukraine aid. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump has pushed European countries to take on a larger share of the burden of supporting Ukraine. NATO told CBS News on Friday it was working with member states to urgently move U.S.-made ammunition and air defenses to Ukraine, but declined to explain if any new mechanism had been established to do so. A day earlier, Mr. Trump spoke with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to discuss European partners purchasing U.S.-made equipment, according to diplomatic sources. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, man. I mean, I get it. It's because what other option do you have? Not for everything. There are alternatives to U.S. made equipment for several different pieces of military equipment, but in large enough numbers for all the different weapons and vehicles and pieces of equipment that are used, that are needed, um, really the U.S. does have kind of a corner on the market uh, in a lot of places. So the issue is with some of that equipment, especially with there were statements about certain systems being able to just be remotely deactivated by DC, or basically the U.S. being able to, after you pay for it, tamper with the system that you have in your possession. Um, I feel like a lot of European allies are hungry for alternatives. Um, Now, the sad thing is those alternatives don't really exist for a lot of these weapon systems. Not that it just the supply chain, the logistics, the factories aren't there yet in Europe. Europe has not sped up its military spending enough, and so regardless, there probably will still be U.S. sales. Almost undoubtedly, it would be a profit for the U.S. Um, I could be wrong about that, but I haven't heard anything about major alternatives yet for certain things like Patriot systems, for example. Otherwise, those would already be getting shipped to Ukraine. as long as it can be paid for. Uh, Let me close the current pinned message. U.S. law requires countries to seek approval before transferring any American-made equipment to a third party such as Ukraine. Under both Mr. Trump and Biden, the federal government has approved transfers by other countries to Ukraine, so that's good. Hopefully there will be more of that. In an interview with NBC News on Thursday, Mr. Trump suggested NATO would buy weapons from the U.S. to transfer to Ukraine. That would mark a dramatic shift in policy since, in the past, NATO as an institution has not directly armed non-member state Ukraine. Instead, individual members of the alliance have chosen to assist Ukraine on their own. I think this is just Trump. This is Trump going off script because, yeah, I mean, basically, in his mind, it's like NATO is different from America. You know, we contribute a whole lot, but NATO is its own thing. NATO needs to pay for this. It's like, I mean, technically NATO has been because the individual member states have been assisting, including the United States. But I just think in Trump's mind, he doesn't understand that. So he's probably thinking, America's paying too much. Other NATO countries need to do it. And it's like, a lot of those countries have already been assisting. So, that's just him talking to his uninformed base back in the States. We're sending weapons to NATO, and NATO's paying for those weapons 100%, Mr. Trump told NBC News' Kristen Welker. When asked about the NATO plan during a press availability in Malaysia on Friday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio declined to detail any new mechanism and referred to plans for European countries to buy weapons. At the end of the day, some of the systems that Ukraine requires are systems that Europe doesn't make. Yeah, that is true. They would have to purchase them from the United States, Rubio said. Yeah, and again, I mean, there has to be exchange. There has to be a major push for more not just economic, but military cooperation and unity within the EU. If the EU does not become a truly federal Europe, a federal EU, like the US federal government, a truly united front, then it's going to be really hard to compete with a place like the United States, which, for all of its faults when it comes to economics and military spending, at least, especially for exports to the rest of the world, you know, there is unity there. Margaret, okay, so there we go. All right. Anyway, on to the next article, which is from CNN. Similar topic. Trump says he struck deal to send U.S. weapons to Ukraine through NATO. Same thing. President Donald Trump told NBC on Thursday he struck a deal with NATO for the U.S. to send weapons to Ukraine through the alliance and that NATO will pay for those weapons 100%. We're sending weapons to NATO and NATO is paying for those weapons 100%, the president told NBC News' Kristen Welker in a phone interview Thursday. We're going to be sending Patriots to NATO, and then NATO will distribute that, he said, according to NBC News. A NATO spokesperson said in a statement Friday, allies continue to work to ensure Ukraine has the support they need to defend themselves against Russia's aggression. This includes urgent efforts to procure key supplies from the United States, including air defense and ammunition. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte spoke to Trump on Thursday. Earlier today, I urged leaders to go further so Ukraine has more ammunition and air defenses, Rutte posted on X. I've just spoken with President Trump and am now working closely with allies to get Ukraine the help they need. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also said earlier Thursday that the United States is actively talking to countries in Europe about sharing Patriot batteries with Ukraine. There are other Patriot batteries, and there are other opportunities, countries that have ordered Patriot batteries that are about to receive shipments of them. It'd be great if one of them volunteered to defer that shipment and send it to Ukraine instead, Rubio told reporters in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, after meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Earlier this week, Trump hinted that the administration was mulling whether to send another Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. Anyway, basically, shorter article, but much of the same thing. And again, we shall see. I don't put any trust at all in Trump. But we haven't seen him try to turn 180 and get the U.S. to somehow buddy up with BRICS nations, mostly because I think it is painfully obvious that would not work for a billion reasons, including many, many historical, um, as well as modern complications. So the U.S. is on the right side of history as of now. Well, I say that the bare minimum, which is try at least saying that it's going to assist other NATO nations in Ukraine, but obviously the wrong side of history in terms of real support not being delivered. Um, and only time will tell if that changes. All right, next, new topic. Let me go ahead and put it up. One sec. Okay, and I gotta put this into reader mode. There we go. This one is from Al Jazeera, which I have mixed feelings about as a news publication, but I will say they put out information on topics that come from a perspective. They focus on certain things that many, many other global outlets do not focus on. So I always give Al Jazeera a chance and hear it out. Alright, so this is. There we go. Russia's Lavrov meets Kim Jong-un in North Korea with Ukraine war at 4. So, as y'all know, North Korean troops continue to be sent to Ukraine. And they are not doing very well, but here's the thing. They're still there, and even if only some of them survive, they're getting direct war experience in the largest war on European soil since World War II. So, that's not a good thing. Basically, even if they perform poorly in this war, it gives them data. It gives them information to prepare for the next big war that they want to spark, which will, of course, be on the Korean Peninsula. All right, North Korean officials have reaffirmed their support for all objectives in the Russia-Ukraine war, says Russian Foreign Minister. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, during which Pyongyang reaffirmed its support for Russia's war in Ukraine, in which thousands of its soldiers have been killed. Lavrov was received by Kim, Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Telegram on Saturday, posting a video of the two men shaking hands and embracing in Wonsan. I just gotta say, it's not surprising at all, but, the fact that it's not Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, or it was Kim Jong-un himself and not a North Korean foreign minister of some sort, who met, it speaks volumes about the fact that Russia does not see North Korea as an equal by any metric. But North Korea will take whatever it can get because obviously it has been in a bad situation for many, many decades now. And the only reason that the regime hasn't fallen is just because of how isolated everything is over there, how difficult it is to get anything, including information back and forth across the DMZ. And yeah, just the fact that they, of course, have a nuclear weapons program. You have to. The more countries you have around you, it's a lot harder to Guys, I'll be honest. It's a lot harder to overthrow a country on a peninsula or an island with very few to no enemy, I guess you could say third-party countries that are hostile to said regime who would like to see it toppled, or at least their citizens would like to see it toppled. That's why it's so hard for regime change to happen in Cuba, in North Korea, because There is no third party outside of South Korea there on the border, other than China and Russia, that can facilitate covert operations to topple a regime. Um, yeah, it's just difficult. It's difficult to overthrow um, isolated dictatorships. Okay. Lavrov was received by. It is the latest in a series. Russian and North Korean state media had announced a visit earlier, saying Lavrov would stay until Sunday. Um, It is the latest in a series of high-profile trips by top Moscow officials to North Korea as the countries deepen military and political ties with a focus on Russia's offensive in Ukraine. Pyongyang has become one of Moscow's main allies during its more than 3-year-long war in Ukraine, sending thousands of troops and conventional weapons to help the Kremlin remove Ukrainian forces from Kursk in Russia. More than 6,000 North Korean soldiers have died in the Russia-Ukraine war, according to British Defense Intelligence. North Korea has also agreed to dispatch 6,000 military engineers and builders to help reconstruction efforts there. Excuse me. I'm guessing this is probably referring to, Kursk. So sending them to Kursk. The South Korean intelligence service has said North Korea may be preparing to deploy additional troops in July or August. Now you see this right here, this is also a pretty bad sign because I don't know for certain, but if you are a Russian citizen who legitimately is brainwashed and believes that your government is doing the right thing or it's helping, trying to quote unquote liberate Ukraine from, you've already drank the Kool-Aid. You're on the brainwash bandwagon. And your whole life you've either not cared or you've been neutral or you have negative associations with North Korea because it's so isolated, it's far away, it's not anything like your culture because it's North Korea, it's a separate language, separate culture, all of that. And then after everything that's happened in the war, that same North Korea sends engineers and builders who start reconstructing things. The sad part is that'll probably get Russians from that region to start to have more positive feelings toward North Korea. And that's the last thing we need. That is the last thing that we need. The South Korean intelligence service has said North Korea may be preparing to deploy additional troops in July or August. The United States and South Korea have expressed concern that, in return, Kim may seek Russian technology transfers that could enhance the threat posed by his nuclear-armed military. Earlier on Saturday, Lavrov met with his North Korean counterpart Cho Son-hui in Wonsan, a city on the country's east coast where a huge resort was opened earlier this month. Now this right here, I gotta say something, guys. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. I mean, it takes a rocket scientist to do anything related to nuclear arms, obviously. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist in terms of strategy and tactics to tell you that those same nuclear weapon shipments, that technology would not be focused on South Korea. That would be focused on the United States and Japan. Basically either threat deterrence or, if North Korea were crazy enough, probably a direct attack not on the US, but more than likely Japan. So I'm surprised not to see any mention about Japanese intelligence services, because they honestly, Japan is not foolish. They have to be involved in keeping an eye on all this as well. But yeah, I think not just nuclear weapons technology, but also more access to Russian intelligence services is probably what North Korea is after in a deal. Because nuclear-armed countries don't defeat one another with their nuclear arms. That's why the United States has not nuked North Korea, or that's why vice versa, that North Korea is not going to nuke anyone. You win a war in the nuclear age, a Cold War, by getting your enemy to eat its own tail. Just like the Soviet Union, just like many countries would like to see the United States do, which hopefully doesn't happen. it's not looking very good the way American society is going right now with things. Um, but yeah, that is what I suspect. In addition to weapons transfers, it's probably intelligence sharing that North Korea gets the most out of all this against any of its enemies. Earlier on Saturday, Lavrov met with his North Korean counterpart Cho Son-hui. Oh yeah. We exchanged views on the situation surrounding the Ukrainian crisis. Our Korean friends confirmed their firm support for all the objectives of the special military operation, as well as for the actions of the Russian leadership and armed forces. Russian news agency, propaganda outlet, I will add, TASS quoted Lavrov as saying. Oh, hold on. Oh yeah. He also thanked the heroic North Korean soldiers, the Russian Foreign Ministry said. In April, the two countries officially confirmed the deployment of North Korean troops to Russia for the first time, saying these troops had helped Russia to recapture the Kursk region, a claim contested by Ukraine. Since then, Kim has been shown in state media paying tribute in front of flag-draped coffins of North Korean soldiers. Russia's Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu has visited Pyongyang multiple times this year. The two heavily sanctioned nations signed a sweeping military deal last November, including a mutual defense clause, during a rare visit by Russian President Vladimir Putin to North Korea. Pyongyang has reportedly been directly arming Moscow to support its war in Ukraine. In the meantime, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his nightly address on Friday that U.S. weapon shipments to his country had resumed, following the Pentagon's decision to briefly halt the delivery of certain weapons to Kiev over fears that U.S. stockpiles were dwindling. The U.S. will deliver military supplies and send its envoy Keith Kellogg to Kiev early next week, said Zelensky. Yeah, and that's from today. So, yeah. That is the update there. North Korea continuing to buddy up to Russia in order to have more arms deterrence and build up, I guess, goodwill, probably intelligence sharing operations with one another. So, not great news. Let's see about some good news next, because I will have to go before too long, unfortunately. And let me put this back up. Alright, first, hold on one sec. Let me grab my phone. I will be right back. Okay, and I'm back. Alright. So let me check one thing right quick. Okay, so I guess the big focus today will be the Taiwan radios and 3D printers for the Ukrainian armed forces. Well, we did get another. So I did like 100 euros. Hold on. Yeah, I did like 100 euros last week, and then another person recently did 10 euros. There are still, let's see, 14 days left, and a total of 490 euros needed in order to get these 3D printers to assist the Ukrainian armed forces. So let me go ahead and put this up right now so I can show it to you all again. I'm putting it into the chat and then up onto the screen. I'll go ahead and pin that. Terrence says, I still don't know what happened to the NASAM Canada ordered in 2022 for Ukraine. I don't know either. I'd have to look into that to see if that was delivered or not. Pin message. North Korea is Kellen Dunn says, North Korea is helping Russia much more than the entire West, and this is disgraceful. Yeah, I agree. Also, South Korea. I really wish that South Korea would. It's probably because they don't want to risk upsetting the balance or upsetting the United States or anyone else, but I really wish South Korea would do more for Ukraine because failing to do so is just basically allowing North Korea to get a one-up in terms of actual battlefield experience, which is not a good thing from a strategic point of view. Anyway, alright, let's open this. And share the screen. Okay, so 2 more 3D printers. You can find it at the link that I sent before. We don't have a nice bar up on our screen for this, but we do have this bar right here, which you can see. 310 euros currently, 38.75% collected of 800 euros. I shared a video on the last stream of one of the 3D printers that I'd helped them to get not too long ago. And it's been very helpful. They've been able to use it to put together different parts, to print out parts for both manufacturing and repairing drones of the same standards being used by the armed forces. Pretty sure they work with both commercial drones from other countries, so probably like DJIs, as well as Ukrainian-made, just homemade Ukrainian drones. So it's a full workshop. And here is Dear folks, I got a new request from Ukraine. My friend was a former techno DJ, a street photographer, and a didgeridoo maker in the past. Love that word. In the past, before Russia started the full-scale invasion. Now he's running a small workshop where he's not only printing a lot of parts for drones, ammunition, etc., but also prepare and improve models for printing. Which is important by all the permanent improvements on the front line. He requested one Bamboo Lab A1 model printer and one Anycubic Cobra S1. Those Bamboos are nice little 3D printers. Who can help and assist in the process of DIY defense? Thank you, Sophie. And so, yeah, there's been multiple people who have helped out with this campaign. If you would like to help, it would be greatly appreciated. And just check out that link that I have pinned in the chat. It is much appreciated. I'm going to make a donation. If you'd like to join me, feel free. If you do donate, please let me know in the chat. Shoot, first person who donates, I'll double whatever your donation is. So let me do mine right quick. do 50 euros. Bring it a little bit closer. All right, and let's see. Yep, there we go. So if I refresh this, now it is at 360 euros. So there's the 50 that I donated. If you would like to join in and assist, it would be greatly appreciated. Sophie does good work. In Ukraine, on the ground in multiple states across the U.S. I believe also in a few other countries in terms of advocacy and support for Ukraine. And every euro counts. So thank you for your support and victory to Ukraine. All right. Now then, with that done, there's not a time limit. This one's got 2 weeks left, but there's not a time limit on the other fundraiser. That's for the radios for Taiwan. And that one should also be in the description. Oh wait, no. What am I saying? For that one, if you want to donate, go ahead and just make a donation at the stream elements for Tridents Against Tyrants. I'll put that into the chat right quick. And again, that will provide radios for a civilian-led self-defense group, which aims to assist people in the case of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. All right, perfect. Shoot, I should have specified. Hold on a sec. Let me do this. Let me actually specify in the pin comment, because I thought that it would. Oh, that works. There we go. 3D printers for drones. And I will pin that version. All right. And that's done. So, let's close that. Of course it'll do that. Defaults back to the window. I don't want it on. All right, one sec. I need a third monitor. Okay. I see that I was muted because of how this damn thing is set up. I really just need to have one window dedicated for. Wow. Mm. That is annoying. All right. My next thing this week is to set up my third monitor again because having just two monitors with this setup is just going to keep happening where I have to shift things and click things, and then my audio is gone because of this very specific way that this software is set up. Anyway, I am still here. There's the Georgia content. All of what I said was not audible. Sorry. But basically, keep a thought out for my friend. They are still there, and hopefully we'll be able to get to Europe or another country before things get worse for people in Republic of Georgia. Anyway, all right. So, what's next? All right, let's. I do have to get going here momentarily. We've been on for 1 hour, so I'm going to cover news. For yeah, let me open this. All right, I'm going to cover news for Ukraine now, since the Republic of Georgia stuff was not audible. And then we're going to close out the stream. Thank you to everybody who donates to assist Ukraine and Taiwan. And let's continue on. All right, which article's here? You know what? We're just going to cover one of these articles to close out because the other one features news about Pete Hegseth in the U.S. military. And I don't have the stomach to talk about a topic while having to look at Pete Hegseth's face. So we'll do the good news. We'll close out with some good news about a gas pipeline that went boom in Russia. All right. Oh, hey, thanks for being here. It wasn't me. Oh, before we finish up with this last article, let me take a look and see if there were any questions. One question from Terence Sav. Would it be worthwhile to start ramping up the exit Russia narrative with its economy almost collapsing? There's still tons of companies involved in production and paying taxes, feeding the army, etc. Oh, it's always useful to ramp up the exit Russia narrative. Um, I think that it will start to get a little more difficult with certain industries. I do think that it is important, though. Always be like, I still don't eat and drink it at certain places that I know are involved with the Russian economy and haven't closed their franchises there. Uh, Obviously, I don't buy anything that's directly made in Russia. I don't buy anything made in Serbia because of the close ties between Serbia and Russia, and other Russian ally countries. Uh, yeah, so I would say that it definitely is helpful. Uh, if that's a form of being involved you'd like to jump into, definitely do so. I highly encourage that. And that's it for questions for right now. I know this was kind of a last minute stream. It's not at the usual time. Wasn't able to get it up exactly when I wanted. Let's finish up and we will close out the stream after this. Yeah, it is appalling how many companies are still like I said, it's just business for many. They don't care about the war, they don't care about lost lives. Let me put it to you like this. Any company that's willing to do business among certain countries in South America, the Middle East, Africa, and parts of Asia, where wars have been active, where war crimes have been committed, where civilians have been um, just brutalized en masse, if those companies don't care about it in any of those parts of the world, they're not going to care about it if it's happening in Europe or North America or parts of Asia that tend to be more stable. Like, if your part of the world destabilizes tomorrow, someone will make a profit. Period. At the end of the day, that's just the truth. It's a horrible and ugly truth, but it's a truth nonetheless. All right, let's go over something positive now, because I need something positive. We're going to close with militarny.com. Gas pipeline supplying Russian defense industry explodes in Siberia. An explosion occurred on the evening of July 10th on a major gas pipeline in Langepas, a city in the Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous Okrug of Russia's Tyumen region. According to Militarny, citing sources in Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, DIU, the blast was the result of a special operation targeting infrastructure serving Russia's military-industrial complex. The damaged section reportedly supplied gas to defense enterprises in the Chelyabinsk, Orenburg, and Sverdlovsk regions. The pipeline has an annual capacity of 2.6 billion cubic meters of natural gas. Given the distance between compressor stations, about 20 kilometers, the two ruptured pipes contained roughly 4 million cubic meters of gas. DIU estimates one-time losses from the gas alone at approximately $1.3 million. Restoration and testing work is expected to take about a month due to difficult terrain. The damaged section lies in a swampy area, which will slow down repairs. Ukrainian intelligence estimates indirect losses from reduced gas deliveries at around $76 million over the same period. Local media confirmed the explosion at around 2300 local time. Residents on the outskirts of Langepas reported hearing loud blasts near the city's industrial zone, where the pipeline runs. Law enforcement and emergency crews responded quickly. This follows a similar incident in Russia's Far East, where a major gas pipeline and water supply line near Vladivostok were destroyed. These systems had supported the 155th Marine Brigade of the Russian Pacific Fleet. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the Vladivostok pipeline serviced multiple military installations along the Sea of Japan coast. The attack also disrupted a water pipeline that provided drinking water to military garrisons. That section of the pipeline had only entered service in March 2025. Didn't even make it 6 months. On May 30th, explosions also struck facilities used by the 155th Marine Brigade. Ukrainian sources said the attack targeted the 47th Air Assault Battalion. The brigade has been accused of committing war crimes against Ukrainian prisoners and civilians. So, that's some good news to share. More gas pipelines, more ammunition depots, more key locations, not just in the occupied territories along the front line, but also in Russia itself. The more of these that go boom, the better. As Dick Dawson would say, whether it's here or over on the shills or with really with any organization or unit, brigade that you perhaps directly support, because many of them have their own direct crowdsourcing, fundraising, pages and platforms. Continue to assist with the Boom Boom Fund, everybody. All right, I gotta go because I am now running late for a call. Thanks everybody for being here. Apologies again for the radio silence for a bit. I'm definitely going to make I'm going to make sure to set up my third monitor this week so that is less of a problem. All right. Thanks, everybody. And Slava Ukraini. I will see you later.